some of the things that she wanted to clear up. We had a phone conversation. So let's break it down a little bit more in detail. At 1:32, a call from a family member comes in stating that there was a possible party and a shooting involved in which where Kaylee had lost her life. And a shooting involved in which where Kaylee had lost her life.
He was holding, it looked like it was this and this was black, and I didn't think that it was a gun, but now I'm thinking that it probably was.
Relative to injuries that other victims have sustained, to the wounds that, say, the immediate family is asking me about one victim, that's very bad form.
I'll cut to the chase.
Yeah.
Their means of death don't match.
Maddie's
They don't.
and Kaylee's cause of death, it does not match based on the autopsy report.
They don't match. Their points of damage don't match. I'm just gonna say it. It wasn't leaked to me. I earned that. I paid for that funeral. I paid for that. It's my right. You ain't taking that from me.
Calm down.
If you don't want to say nothing, that's your bet. But don't say I'm leaking anything. I paid that bill.
Like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun.
I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Listen to Pavarotti. Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. And this is going to be a Sunday night special, and I'm going to be actually laying out what I've been kind of skirting around for quite some time now. And that's what I believe the evidence of the case as it relates to this specific aspect of the case has led me to believe. So I'm going to lay it out what I believe happened in this circumstance based on everything that I've seen, a lot of evidence, and based on statements and what the most likely scenario is. And could be wrong, could be way off. I don't think I am though. And whenever I dive into a certain aspect of the case, I mean, for me, it's easy to get the big picture, but when you dive into the fine details, I mean, that's where you can get things wrong. So I could be wrong. And I've always said that if I get anything wrong, then I'll correct it really fast once I get enough evidence to show me that I'm either right or wrong. But at this point, I mean, I'm leaning towards the more than likely scenario based on everything that I've seen in this case. And this is going to be surrounding what happened to one of the victims in the case, because it seems to me like ever since the beginning, we have been given breadcrumbs to the fact that one of the victims in the case were unalived in a manner that was different than all the other victims. And I want to be able to explain that in my mind based on everything that I've seen as far as evidence in the case. That's why I've been doing a lot of videos as it relates to, for example, which bedroom downstairs was even Bethany's. And the reason I've done that is because I would really like to know which bedroom was Bethany's, because I think it does greatly impact how I feel about this situation. And at this point, even though that I'm certainly not certain, but I'm going to assume that the bedroom to the right was actually Bethany's. And the reason I say that is because it seems like everything around that 417 gunshot lends to the fact that if she was in that bedroom to the right, and maybe it isn't Bethany's, but maybe it was just the bedroom that they ran into. But the fact that she heard the shot, she's seen the flash under her door, and the placement of the stairs relevant to her being able to see that spark, I think lends to her being in that bedroom to the right. But see, it's little things like that that messes everything up when you can't nail down the facts of something as simple as which bedroom was hers. And I think based on the statements the original statements, not the ones that were manipulated as time went on with Dylan, really lends to the credibility of what happened in this situation. So my working theory on what happened to Kaylee, let me just lay it out. And then we're going to go through and we're going to discuss things that I think point to that. All right. Number one, there's no doubt that there was a gun involved in this incident. We know that, even based on the reports, that law enforcement believed that the assailant, or at least one of the assailants, was gun rack guy. I mean, it's in their police reports. It's made its way into the PCA. There's no doubt that they believe gun rack guy was one of the assailants. I mean, they seen him on camera, clad in black, heading towards the King Road residence at 350. We heard him rack his gun right before he did that. I mean, everything lends to gun rack guy going in there with a firearm. I don't believe he even meant to go in there and shoot anybody. I doubt they really wanted that firearm to go off. And they may have had some type of suppressor on it. But even a suppressor on a firearm is not like you see in the movies where it goes pew, pew. No, a suppressor just suppresses the shot. It muffles it away, in a way. And we'll look into that in this video. But my working theory as of this point is, when this thing went down, Kaylee was on the bottom floor in one of those bottom floor bedrooms. I believe during the atrocity, Kaylee went upstairs from the bottom floor. And when you hear Dylan say that she went upstairs, seen somebody, yelled, "There's somebody's here," and then came running back downstairs, I believe that she didn't turn at the bottom of the stairs and go into the kitchen. That's certainly not what somebody would do that was running as fast as they could. I believe Kaylee kept running down the top floor stairs, ran to the staircase, and headed down the bottom floor stairs towards that front door. And I believe that was around 417 when you hear the shot. Bethany hears the firecracker, sees the spark. And I believe that was the shot that took Kaylee down. As she was running down the stairs away from the assailants, I believe they ran to the stairs and shot Kaylee. That's what the evidence is telling me. Whether the assailants brought Kaylee all the way back up to Maddie's room, or the cover up from law enforcement after that ensued and did it, well, that's something that remains to be seen. That is my working theory on it, though. And we're going to dive into that working theory, and I'm going to give you evidence to back it up. Hold on to your hats, folks.
Relative to injuries that other victims have sustained, to the wounds that, say, the immediate family is asking me about one victim.
I'll cut to the chase.
Yeah.
Their means of death don't match.
At the conclusion of the 4 autopsies, VS met with Mabit, Tollison and myself and told us the following. Ethan's fatal injuries were from stab wounds. Ethan only had sharp force injuries. Xana's fatal injuries were from lacerations. Xana only had sharp force injuries. Maddie's fatal injuries were from lacerations. Maddie only had sharp force injuries. Kaylee's fatal injuries included.
We have now learned, because documents that have not been public have now been made public, and Xana Kernodle found on the floor over 50 stab wounds, many of them, much of them defensive. Can you explain that? Put that into layman's terms, the wounds and the defensive aspect of them.
She fought back, and she fought hard. And that's unless Darren can expand on that, that's primarily the reason.
Yeah, that was. Xana absolutely fought. And we know that Xana was up. We know that Xana had just gotten her DoorDash shortly before this, and was actively up. And so, yeah, she did. She fought.
So as she fought back, he kept stabbing.
The fight just continued, yes.
Kaylee, In the documents that just became public, there was a preliminary autopsy report that said she was stabbed over 20 times. Mr. Gonsalves said, and we haven't seen the final autopsy, but he has said she was stabbed, Kaylee, over 30 times. Do you know the amount of times she was stabbed?
We do. We know the exact amount of times that every one of them was stabbed. And it's not something that we would speak about for the privacy of the families. But I can tell you we've met with families, and his information that he has is very accurate.
Well, we know because of the public documents her face was unrecognizable. And then the concept of, okay, a second weapon. Where do you stand on that to set the record straight? Then the concept of, okay, a second weapon. Where do you stand on that to set the record straight?
We believe that there was one primary weapon. The same knife was used to kill all four. As has been reported, and I think the family has spoke to this, Kaylee was struck in the face, and we don't know what caused the marks that were left by it. It wasn't fatal, and we just don't know what caused that. And we've never located, obviously, the knife that we know did kill all four, and we don't know what was used to do that.
Now, a fist can be a deadly weapon.
Right.
The injuries to the face, could that have simply been from a hand on her face?
No.
So you believe the injuries to her face came from something other than his fist?
Yes, I think the fist could have been part of it, but it certainly appears something else struck her to cause the marks that we saw that is not consistent with a fist.
What about marks near her mouth that came out? I believe they came out in public documents. Bound?
Yep.
Gagged?
And those are what I'm referencing, and no, it doesn't appear, there was no evidence that she was bound or gagged.
Are the marks from a knife?
No. No.
So the reality is the extent of what was done to her may be a mystery forever.
Yeah, it may be.
Then the concept of, okay, a second weapon, and we haven't seen the final autopsy.
And we may never see the final results from an autopsy on certain areas because the state is now asking the judge to even keep sealed descriptions of certain autopsy photographs from S189 all the way down to S1-127. Are these the descriptions of the photos of the autopsies of Kaylee? I would have to think at this point that is likely. And why is that? Why would they need to hide that? At approximately 3:50 hours on 11/13/22, per the timestamp on the video, a figure clad in dark clothing can be seen walking from the building which houses 500 Queen Road. The figure walks to the west of the parking lot and leaves the frame of the video as the figure enters the sidewalk area between the other two apartment buildings at 500 Queen Road. The terminus of this sidewalk is immediately east of 1122 King Road. The figure is not captured by the cameras any further. Video of a suspect video, as described below, leads investigators to believe the unalivings occurred between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. Dylan stated she opened her door for a third time after she heard crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking. I think we have well established at this point that law enforcement not only knew this was a multiple perp crime, but they had identified one of their perps actually early in the investigation, as you just seen right there, as the figure clad in black correlates perfectly from police report to probable cause affidavit, going as far as to securing the timeline for the atrocity, beginning at 4 a.m., just as that assailant was heading to the house at 3:50. Knowing that the vehicle that circled the neighborhood did not park until 4:08 reinforces this beyond speculation, in my humble opinion. But now that we also have established that one of the perps undeniably had a firearm as he went towards the King Road residence, then what ensues from there can easily be determined by the evidence in the case.
Until I walk.
Now that we've established that law enforcement all but admits to a second weapon, that one of the assailants undeniably had a firearm as he headed towards the King Road residence, and injuries of at least one of the victims has been hidden from the beginning, and the cover-up ensues to this day, now it's time to establish that that trigger was pulled at some point in the event. The establishment of a shot fired is the easiest thing to establish. At approximately 4:17 a.m., a security camera located at 1112 King Road, a residence immediately to the northwest of 1122 King Road, picked up distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper, followed by a loud thud.
At 4:21, 4:22, 4:30, she made these phone calls immediately after the bang.
Okay.
Immediately after the bang. The bang. The bang.
Said she thought maybe there was a fire or like a firework. We didn't know. She heard this loud noise and there was a light, I guess.
Did you hear like a pop, like a bang?
I don't know. Did you hear it bang?
It's what she heard.
Okay.
That's what she heard. Okay. What time did you hear? Did you wake up at all between two?
I heard something like loud and maybe like large. And usually like she barks at things. And then I thought I saw like a firecracker, so I thought someone maybe was just drunk and like put a firecracker in the house. But I wasn't even really sure because I was kind of still asleep, so I wasn't sure if it was like real.
So, I'm sorry, I had listened to a couple things at a time. Loud, you thought you saw a firecracker because of a quick flash?
Yeah, through like my door.
Brian Koberger, through his attorney of record, files the accompanying declaration of Matthew Nodal in support of their objection to the state's motion in limine. And let's look at the declaration of Matthew Nodal. I, Matthew Nodal, swear under penalties of perjury that the information in this declaration is true and correct to the best of my knowledge. My name is Matthew Nodal. I am a forensic scientist with degrees in microbiology, medical technology, and forensic science. Certifications in firearms, tool marks, gunshot residue, and laser scanning. And all of these certifications that Mr. Nodal has is strictly firearms. Firearms, tool marks are for firearms, gunshot residue obviously for firearms, even the laser scanning is for firearms. My total experience includes over 38 years working exclusively in forensic science as outlined in the attached CV. So what is Matthew Nodal an expert in as it relates to the crime scene?
Pretty quickly after starting with the State Patrol, I became a member of the crime scene response team as basically as a student mentor. I was mentored by the senior members of the organization. My career actually started a few years prior to that, where I was working in a private laboratory in forensic toxicology. In the toxicology lab, we didn't do a lot of reconstruction, and we certainly were not doing shooting incident reconstruction. But I got out of that job and right into the Washington State Patrol, where I was doing chemistry and trace evidence analysis. And an opportunity came up with the crime scene response unit, and I took that responsibility on as well, and have been in that continuously ever since. So I'm about 30 years into the field of studying crime scenes and primarily shooting reconstruction and how to reconstruct events that have involved the discharge of a firearm. I've been with the Washington State Patrol for 15 years, and working as a private consultant was something that was always interesting to me. Being able to run my own business and make my own decisions. So the time seemed right when I left the State Patrol to go forward and start out on my own. I'd gained tremendous experience through my time at the Washington State Patrol, so that served me very well. Ultimately, it was a decision where I was glad to begin to run my own show and sample the water outside of the government business. Government comes with a lot of baggage, of course, so it was nice to be independent and be able to call my own shots, work my own cases, and make the decisions for myself. The thing to understand about shooting incident reconstruction, it's often confused with recreation. And recreation would be a process whereby you might make a movie to try to show how something occurred. Reconstruction, in my view of thinking about it, is using the science of the physical evidence to test elements of a scene. Ultimately, you need to know what's being said about a scene, and you can use the physical evidence to then test those statements. So if a person, for example, says, I was standing at the doorway when I shot into the room, we might be able to reconstruct the path of that bullet and see, does it in fact point back supporting the witness statement or the shooter statement, or is the angle incorrect and the shooter is deceiving us somehow? So reconstruction is the act of using physical evidence in order to test elements of a scene. Then crime scene processing, which is where you gather that data for reconstruction. The typical case that I get involved with starts with a paper trail. Now as a private consultant, I no longer am quote unquote under the tape. That is, I'm not getting invited into the primary scene when maybe a victim is still on the ground and we are still gathering evidence.
Right.
As a private consultant, most of that work has already been completed. So it starts by reviewing the available data. And sometimes that leads to the position where I want to see the actual physical items that we have. And one of the things that's interesting about reconstruction is an attorney who I may work for may have a crime laboratory report that says, hey, this gun fired this bullet. And I'm not so much interested in the gun that fired the bullet. I'm interested in what does that bullet look like? Did it ricochet off of a surface, or did it go directly into its target? Did it collect fibers or tissue or hair or something along the way? So the reconstruction is beyond just simply counting lands and grooves and microscopic comparison. It takes in the whole path of that bullet and how that bullet performed in the scene.
Okay.
I'm not really looking at anything in the bloodstain pattern area. The reason I like to maintain my bloodstain pattern expertise is because on every time people are shot, there's almost always blood. I say almost always because I have had situations where people have so much layers of heavy clothing that you don't actually see bleeding out in the field. The reason I like to maintain my bloodstain pattern expertise is because on every time people are shot, there's almost always blood.
As I walked west from the living room, there was a half wall to my right. I could see multiple drops and runs of red liquid along the entire half wall. Across the half wall, north, I saw more red stains on the wall above the first and second floor staircase. The stains and liquid were consistent with cast off and appeared to be blood.
We tend to use for dangerous items like guns and knives, a display box that the item would then be locked in to display to the jury, and so that can go to the jury without fear of an accident happening. I don't think there are any guns in this case, so I'm not as worried about that in terms of those being pointed at anyone by. I don't think there are any guns in this case. I don't think there are any guns in this case. I don't think there are any guns in this case.
And a shooting involved in where Kaylee had lost her life.